This is the voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jess Dewell of Red Direction, and we are talking about guts and grace today. Not only are we talking about guts and grace, this is like a super special program because Tracy's right here in my recording studio with me. Usually we do this in two different places.
Totally.
And because we're both in Denver, because we could make the commute work. Thank you for coming out. That's so
Yeah,
fabulous.
totally.
We get to be
It's a
here.
beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. It's so wonderful. And I found her sitting outside on a bench, and I was like, I thought I saw your car come by. So here we are. Guts and grace. What does that actually mean? Well, Tracy Revell is going to tell us. Not only is she going to tell us, we are going to dive into things like personal power. We're going to be talking about this concept of how much space we take up and actually taking up the space we really take up in real life. It's amazing how many of us, we try and be smaller physically than we actually are. Not physically like buff and worked out, but like we want to be all together and not seen as much. So this is the thing. To have guts takes grace, and we really have to claim it. We have to claim the space that we take up. Let me introduce you to Tracy, and then right after the open, you will get to meet her because you've already seen her once on the show, so it'll be great to have her here again. Tracy Revell works with women to embrace their feminine-centered creativity and their emotional intelligence. She is all about balancing the feminine with the masculine, allowing women to focus and take action to excel where they put their attention, to live life confidently, powerfully, and with presence. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Well, I just want to jump right in. Welcome back. First of all, this is
Thank
really
you.
great. And it's good to do this in a different way too. I know computers are fun and easy and useful, and this is just a whole nother element.
We wanted to get together and have coffee. So I'm like, let's just get together and do our thing and no coffee, just hang out.
And this is great because finding time in your schedule and my schedule that overlap is very interesting.
Yeah.
And how about if we start there? How much scheduling do we need to schedule more than we already do? Do we need to get rid of our schedules? What do we need to do when we're thinking about this concept of guts and grace and the structure that we've imposed on ourselves?
So guts and grace, basically form and freedom, structure and flow. We got to have some structure to be able to have flow. Otherwise, we're chaotic and all over the place, right? So no, don't throw away your schedule.
Oh, come on. That's not what I wanted to hear.
I mean, yeah, because then we're just flying all over the place.
True.
And like think about a river, right? Water flows. What if there wasn't a riverbed? What if the water just was everywhere? Nothing gets done, like space. Nothing gets done, right? So you have to have the structure for the flow to go where it needs to go. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. And so it's interesting because we're in this thing, and we're going to talk about my family for a minute because my little guy, who's almost 7, he started, you get to that age, and some of us never grow out of it, and we take it to work with us, which really makes people around us crazy. Those of you who are listening, you're going to know as soon as I say it, which is we push back against everything. We decide we're going to miss every deadline consciously or unconsciously.
Right.
We decide, no, I want to do it my way all the time. And that is perfect to test boundaries and find where those edges are. One of the things I had to tell Carter, my son, recently was, I totally get you want to do your own thing. Here's the deal. You do not live by yourself on a mountaintop. You live in a family with a household. You go to school with kids and teachers. Right. You go out in the world. And the thing is, we've all agreed that time is this way that we come together. And so in terms of a schedule and in terms of the way that we're putting this together, every time we choose to meet somebody, every time we commit to something, every time we allow ourselves to have an obligation, we now are on something where we have in common, and time and schedules happens to be one of the things that we all consider in common.
Totally.
And so if Would you add something? Because here I could use some
Mhm.
parenting advice, but
Yes.
I'm also thinking about business because I have a couple of clients that I work with
Mhm.
that we need to work on this as well.
Well, you brought up boundaries.
Yeah.
So boundaries. A lot of people don't know what boundaries are.
Let's come back to that. Okay.
So in fact, I just had a conversation with a woman yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, what are boundaries? And she's like, it's funny you asked me that question, and I can think of what everybody else's boundaries should be, and I can't think of what mine are.
Oh.
So,
okay, I got a little chill right then.
Yeah. Well, that's most people, honestly. I mean, a lot of what I do is work with boundaries, and a lot of people don't really know what boundaries are. So, first of all, boundaries are guts.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like they can be permeable or impermeable. Okay. Like this, no way, no how, won't change, whatever it is. And then impermeable can have some give and take within this is my boundary, and it can move a little bit. Does that make sense? Now, with kids, kids need boundary and structure.
Of course.
To be able to step into grace.
Okay. Talk about that.
So think about kids that grow up with no boundaries, right? How graceful are they in their lives?
Yeah, not very.
Yeah. So they run around like bull in the china closet, having to figure it out.
And sometimes not doing that. We see them in an adult state as well. And in fact, you and I are from a generation where parents decided maybe we didn't need as many boundaries. Maybe we were a little too we were a little too this, we were a little too that.
Maybe.
In different ways. Maybe. And so if we don't have boundaries, if we don't recognize what's permeable or impermeable, how do we even begin to think about that? About creating some sort of a boundary.
You mean are we talking about your kids still?
No, but we can totally use Carter as the starting point, because I'm thinking about there are times and situations where I show up in a meeting, I show up at a new client's office, I show up at an existing client's office that we've been working together for a long time.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I know way more than I need to know about what's going on. And in fact, if I wasn't me, it would potentially be detrimental to a situation, a negotiation, or a next step. And so, right, we're talking about these boundaries in that sense of what do I tell, what do I not tell?
So vulnerability too.
I would say there's an element of that, because there's definitely the personal piece. Am I going to tell you my whole life story? Can I tell you, do I know what is exactly enough for this conversation?
Okay. So it really starts with people having personal internal boundaries.
Yeah. Okay.
Really. And that is the bottom line with everything. You have to have internal boundaries. You have to set them within yourself to be able to set them outside.
So how do I do that? How do I make a new boundary?
You notice what's working for you and not working for you.
It's a good start. Okay.
It's a really good start.
Yeah.
Let me think of a example. Let's just say relationships, right? Boundary. If somebody's doing something in relationship that doesn't make you feel good or honored or isn't what you want in a partner, deciding to end that relationship would be a boundary.
Right. Okay. What if I can't
isn't working
choose them?
for me anymore? Huh?
What if it's in a workplace and I don't get to choose whether or not they stay?
You get to choose if you keep getting mad at said person.
Okay.
Or if you just go, that's them and that's their stuff. My boundary is I'm not going to take it on or let it disturb my space. Does that make sense? So permeable, impermeable. I also work a lot with tolerations. Like, what are you tolerating in yourself and outside of you? Right. So
this ties into boundaries very well.
Oh, toleration is all boundaries. So I had a client once who, she was so lost in victim. And she went into, I don't want to think about stinking thinking. And it's not that it's criticizing, it's noticing that doesn't work for me. And this is what I go off into.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to choose to not go off into the spinning about it and to stay centered in myself. That's your stuff. And if you can change it and take whatever it is in your life that you're tolerating out of your life, you can do that too. Does that help?
It does. So we're talking about awareness.
Yeah.
We're talking a lot about awareness.
It's all about awareness.
And there are 3 things that I've noticed about awareness. Would you like to know them?
Of course.
I would say, if not, that's totally okay.
Yes, please.
But yes, so the first is I get done with a reaction and I say to myself, holy crap, I just did that again. I can't believe I'm still reacting to the same thing the same way.
Totally.
Okay, so you see the reaction after the fact. Then there's another step of awareness where the more aware we are of what's going on, we might start catching ourselves in the middle of it. Oh, I'm here again.
Totally.
Okay, I may not have any control over what's going on, but I'm noticing I'm in it instead of once it's done. And the third is what you were just talking about, where you end up recognizing at the beginning, oh, here I go. And there's that place for choice. And what is your experience around choice when you make the choice to do the old pattern, let's say, versus making a choice to do a new one? Have you ever thought about that? And in your work, is there a word or a phrase that you're working to solidify and expand that concept?
Of choice?
Yes, of being able to recognize that split second before I react and choose to respond instead.
Split second. I don't know if I have a word for that.
Okay.
What comes to me is that I use a couple terms, power of 2 and power of 3.
Yes.
Have we talked about this?
We did. We talked about that in your last show, but give us a brief synopsis because we want to track with who we've got right now.
Power of 2 is that the clarity, there's always a transmitter and there's always a receiver. Always. A truck driving by is a transmitter. How I'm hearing it, if I'm deaf, if I can hear it or not, is receiving it or not. Basic, outside of conversations. Power of 3 is there's the transmitter, there's the receiver, and then there's the communication and the relationship. The clarity of each, the boundaries of each, the filters of each, the past experiences of each, and how we're able to move into blank, clear space to allow in something outside of what we think we know affects the communication and the relationship. Okay. So if
keep going.
If we're pinging around off of everything outside of us and really not getting grounded and knowing what we know, we're going to keep pinging around what's outside of us rather than setting that boundary. Okay, let me drop in and know what I know.
And know what I know.
Know what I know.
Know what I know. So how do we use this? Because we've been taught in a variety of ways. Maybe we haven't even been taught. We've been modeled. I'm going to say that. People do not consciously say, oh yeah, be out of your body. Don't really get in touch with yourself. Right. Don't know about your feelings. We don't know that. It's just what we tend to be modeled. And this is for men and for women.
Sure.
We tend to be taught these ways to be through modeling of behavior. And
absolutely.
So you're talking about coming back in and getting to know what we know. You're not talking about like divine psychic stuff. You're talking about actually recognizing what? The experiences we've had, how we ourselves are putting together those experiences to shape the way we show up.
Emotional intelligence.
Thank you. Okay.
Is the bottom line here. Emotional intelligence into intellectual intelligence. So as women, but as people, we're hardwired to know what we know in our bodies, which is why I pull in the body piece.
Okay.
Which is why it's bold, because nobody's doing that. And we are here in these bodies for a reason. So we are hardwired to know what we know, intuition, mental, and then emotional, right? And we tend to be just shut off and disconnected and outside that we don't actually listen to it.
Okay, so what about all these people who are listening? By the way, I'm not one of them. I'm not a super exercise person.
Oh.
Okay, so when I say that, so there are women who go, and men who go, I need to do this. This helps me, whatever it does. It helps me ground. It helps me stay in shape. It helps me get rid of stress. How many of them are actually in their bodies in your experience?
Oh, God.
Not a lot, a lot.
50. People aren't as much in their bodies as they think. It's like, we literally, again, tend to go outside of ourselves instead of really dropping in and noticing when we bring ourselves present and into sensation, right? It gives us this clear space of what's real and what's here instead of what we're thinking.
So can you give us a tip on how to start dropping in? Because if all of us are like, oh, of course I can do this because I'm mindful or I meditate or I exercise. Well, there are all of those things that we can be doing. You're saying more often than not, there are going to be a percentage of us that aren't actually doing what we think we're doing. So how can we check in and find out if we need some more work in our presence, physical space?
So one thing I always have people start with in the very beginning is just noticing your steps. Like, be in your feet right now.
Right. I'm only standing on one foot.
Well, it's fine.
Yeah.
Just
but I'm
notice that,
it.
but notice that foot really connect to the ground.
Right.
How often do you really notice that?
Oh, it's one of the reasons I started standing. Wasn't because sitting is so bad for you these days, right? I mean, they've associated sitting with smoking in terms of the physical effects on your body. Didn't you? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But I do it because I want to move. I don't want to be confined in a way, and I don't really want my butt what's touching something that's not even the ground. I want my feet always in contact with the ground in a way. And if I'm sitting, I lose that. Whereas if I'm standing, I keep it.
And sitting also gives us more of a chance to shrink. Circling back to the very beginning when you were talking about like not being seen. So how many people do you know that go through life like this?
A lot.
Yeah. This is like energetically, physically, emotionally.
And for those of you who are listening, this is, think about holding a tiny baby that's crying in a movie theater. You don't want anybody to know that baby's crying. And you want to, you know what, I'm just trying to think of the posture that you would take, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm kind of embarrassed and there's this noise coming from my lap and we got to figure out how to quiet the noise. Because
now, can you feel how stressful that feels in your body?
It's incredibly stressful to be hunched over like this. One, because I hate to be embarrassed about interrupting other people's space.
Yeah.
Not claiming my space.
Boundaries.
And two, I'm like, you're talking about, I'm like, how do we describe this? So I'm in this posture as I describe it, and it is insane.
Stressful. Okay. So this circles back around to what I talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So close down. First of all, let me finish my thought. Defensive, protected energy lives here. Okay. Closes down heart space. So we're trying not to get hurt or to be attacked or whatever, right? Which just does all kinds of stuff to neck issues, shoulder issues, yada, yada, back issues, right? So opening heart space and letting this open up. Okay. Just, you feel more clear. And more connected and grounded and breathing, something we all need to do to be alive.
That's right.
So circling back around to this, like, can you just feel the stress in my body?
Yeah, I can.
Presence.
Right.
It all shows up. So when we're in closed, defensive, shut down postures in our bodies, it releases cortisol, which is the stress hormone.
Yes.
So when we're in open, connected, grounded, in our posture, strong postures, it releases testosterone, which is the personal power hormone, which is the clarity. I know what I know, standing in myself instead of, oh my God.
I think we need to make a point to talk about this. You just mentioned testosterone and you work with women.
I do.
And we talk about, when you and I talk, we talk a lot about the feminine. What role does testosterone actually play in a woman embracing her feminine?
So here's
Is it
the deal.
the same? Because we think feminine, masculine, we think estrogen, testosterone. Are they interchangeable? Maybe it's a better place to start. A different place to start.
We all have all the hormones in our bodies, first of all.
Okay.
And as I've been finding out and wanted to ignore for a very long time, hormones all affect all of us, period. Whether we want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
And
once upon a time, I'm going to get totally vulnerable here. So every once in a while, people learn stuff about me. It shapes the way I think. I was brought up to believe there was no such thing as PMS. And I embraced that.
that's a belief.
And I fought that. And it was a belief.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter how badly my body yelled at me and said, "You're wrong. I'm real." And by the way, the harder I pushed to keep it out, the louder it yelled at me.
Totally.
And have you ever had an experience like that?
Well, that's, again, what we resist persists. So if we act like it's not there, it doesn't mean it's not there. It means it runs us, even though we don't think it's there or want to admit it's there.
Yeah. So at work, I'm trying to think of a way. At work, if it were to show up, it's kind of like the person who, no matter what you're doing to try and help them meet a deadline, they're going to miss that deadline. And
that's their problem.
Well, it is their problem.
Okay,
however,
so circling back around to tolerations, it's like if somebody's driving you crazy at work and you're wanting to control their behavior or change them in some way, what is it pushing in you?
I love this. We have to think about who owns this and who really owns it.
Yeah. What are you tolerating in yourself that you're taking out on trying to control in that other person? You know? So, neediness. Control, masculine, beating over the head is all really trying to make ourselves okay instead of just being okay. Do you understand?
I understand.
Do you all understand?
Yeah.
So let me circle back around.
Yes.
You asked me about estrogen, testosterone. So I want to finish.
Let's do that.
So it doesn't necessarily, and I had this discussion with a man last week who, it's not about man, woman.
Yeah.
Masculine, feminine is simply emotional intelligence, intuition. I know what I know, centered, grounded, and taking that out into smart, decisive, directive, logical action.
All right.
Intellectual intelligence. So we both need testosterone and estrogen
to make that
happen. Sorry, you got some in there. Yeah. It's not about man, woman, necessarily masculine, feminine. It's that centered internal.
So this is an important distinction we want to make. When you hear the words masculine and feminine out there, I think a lot of people, and in fact, I know a lot of people from the conversations I've had with people about masculine, feminine, that they associate it with gender.
Totally.
And we know now more than ever before, there are all kinds of other genders we haven't even considered yet, right? I mean, if you think about it, we've got all of these wonderful people that are standing up and saying, but it's not me, but it's not me, but it's not me. And we still have that yin and that yang, the masculine and the feminine. You were talking about intuition combined with, or opposite decisiveness. And that when we embrace them both, we're like raising the bar and we're playing at a whole different game. We're playing a whole different game.
Right. That's the point.
Okay.
That's the entire point of embodied confidence. It's coming from that internal, clear space. No matter what, whether you're clear or not, it shows up in your presence. If you listen to your intuition and your heart. So our emotions, our heart, is what get us to pay attention to the knowing what we know. So I used the example of the man that I was dating that in my body, I was just always like this, because that's how he runs his life, a little bit of chaos. And I was just always like, something feels weird. Is it me? And just really that dropping in. But it was this emotion of like, something just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just getting to the discerning of, okay, what's in the emotion and what is there for me to learn here?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Instead of
Mm-hmm.
just pushing it off and denying it and tolerating.
Mm-hmm.
Does that,
It does. And I'm
Okay.
going to pause here.
Cool.
We're going to take a station break.
That's what I thought.
And I want to refresh just a little bit because I want to circle back and pull a couple of things together.
Okay.
Everybody listening, this is program 132, Guts and Grace, where we have Tracy Revell with us. And we've been talking about a lot of different things, and they are confusing topics in the way that you may hear them out in the world. And Tracy is really adding some clarity for us that we can look at masculine and feminine and have that be separate from gender.
Mm-hmm.
We can also have it separate from role.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think of a business and a hierarchy of business, or even in a flat organization,
Mm-hmm.
we think of a business having these masculine traits. I want to be productive. I want to
Mm-hmm.
measure. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want any feeling. I don't want any intuition. I don't want any of these things, because how do we do all of that? And we're in a time where that has unintended side effects of our organizational culture
Mm-hmm.
and the operational strength that we may have at any point in time. So one of the things I hear you talking about, especially as we get into emotions and hearts and presence,
Mm-hmm.
is that I want to pick back up and bring that into showing up in our body
Mm-hmm.
and how people perceive us.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you suggest to somebody who they might not know how they're in their body? You've already
Mm-hmm.
given us a start of how do we get into our body, but how do we see what other people see about us?
Okay.
Is my question. How do we see what other people can see?
Are we taking a break, or do you want me to answer the question?
Answer the question. We're going to keep going.
How do we see what other people see?
Yes. Or how do we get? We see something. Other people see something else. How do we find out if they're the same or different? Or maybe let's skip that part, because we're going to know. You already told us how.
So
we're gonna
the
know,
deal is,
how do we make them align up?
You know, it goes back to that meme that it's not my business what you think of me. It's my business what I think of me, you know?
Mm.
So the more we can show up really clear with ourselves and noticing how we're being in heart-centered and how we're being in our bodies, how our posture is, that awareness, noticing when we shut down, that's really the thing that we have control of.
Mm-hmm.
The other person, power of one, power of two, power of three, the other person's going to have their perception of us that
Sure.
we might necessarily not be able to change. What we can change is our presence within ourselves. Okay.
Yes.
And be as clear as we can within ourselves, and they'll see a more clear presence, I guess.
Sure.
Reflection from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
They're always going to have their perceptions. Does that answer your question?
Well,
at all?
it does. And the thing is, so what if I need them to introduce me to new clients?
Uh-huh.
What if I'm trying to advance up the career ladder in my organization?
Then you show up as clean and as clear and as strong and as centered and embodied and as who you are,
Mm-hmm.
truly,
Okay,
as possible. That is what gets the connections. How did you and I meet?
I walked up to you at a networking event.
I was like, hi, I love you.
Yeah.
I love you too.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Right?
exactly really how it went down. It's like,
I don't know if we said, by the end of the night, we loved
by
each
the end
other,
of the
but-
night, we loved each other. That's true. But at the beginning, there was very much eye contact at the beginning. There was a thoughtful conversation at the
Mhm.
beginning. There was a genuine interest of figuring out what you were doing at this place,
Mhm.
because you know,
I was meeting you.
I was going to say, and I remember you said that to me. You
I
said,
did.
I'm not exactly sure why I was here. I now
Made
know.
myself come.
It was because I was supposed to meet you. And you know how special that made me feel?
Oh, can we hug on the radio?
We can hug. Yes, we can totally hug on the radio.
So
Oh.
I was actually just on a live conversation with one of my friends / mentors yesterday
Mhm.
about heart-centered.
Yeah.
And when it's the same thing as emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
When we live from that heart-centered, authentic, oh my God, is this my stuff? Oh my God, how am I showing up? Oh my God, am I really like present
Mm-hmm.
and confident, even though I'm not perfect?
Right.
God's grace.
Yes.
You know, that shows up in our presence.
It does.
Period. People
Yes.
pick it up. People tell me all the time, my presence is whatever they tell me, right? I make no bones about the fact that I'm not perfect.
Well, neither any of us, right? I mean,
but there are a lot of people running around going, oh my God, I can't let people see this. And it's like, okay, if it is something there that you could change to be a little more effective, then, or I could change to be a little more effective. How can I change it?
Right.
You know? So,
and how can we change it?
Well,
okay, so let's think about that.
So circling back around to one of my clients, I start with language. Very simple. Learning to rewire mind and body. When we start to wire and learn how to say something differently, it changes us internally. It's literally a nervous system, neurological thing. It changes us internally, how we say it out, and vice versa. Okay, so it's this interplay. NLP, yes?
Yes.
It's a basic premise of
Neuro-linguistic programming.
So when we start to learn how to say things differently, we start to have that mental body expression connection different.
Okay.
We start to be able to connect differently to our bodies and to start noticing what we notice differently from a more of a clear space, starting to rewire with language. I have a client who is a large woman, and at her core, she is the sweetest, softest, most beautiful being. And she has patted herself with all of this weight, and she's got a lot of pain in her body because of all of this stuff that's happened. Because she is so sweet, and she's had to just to like survive. So she's become very masculine, very controlling, right? Very in your face. I never saw her that way, just because I see people. And we were working with her learning how to engage her core muscles differently. Specifically your pelvic floor, which, boys, you have pelvic floors too.
And they're all important.
They're all important.
They're all important.
She was talking about forcing them and clenching them, making them work. And I was asking her to think about allowing them to engage. So start to think about the wording, right? And connecting in your body with that connection, allowance, and movement instead of force hard, right? She hated my guts for about a month. Hated my guts, was going to quit. I randomly had her pay up front. I gave her a deal. I didn't need to give her a deal, and I did. I have no idea why. Because I needed to. She would have quit if she hadn't paid me all up front, because she was that pissed. So uncomfortable. And one day I get this text, and it says, "Is this what I was missing?" And she sent me a text talking about the power of language.
Breakthrough.
Ding, ding, ding.
Right. And she may or may not recognize that it came from your work right away.
Oh, no, she did.
Oh, she did. Good.
Every single time I see her, she's just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yep. She just had like this amazing visit with her family.
Great.
Right? In this crazy situation. And she was able to just be like, wow, you know, and not take all of it on.
Yes.
She took some of it on, because I could still feel the chaos when she got there.
Well, we can't ever turn ourselves off when we're in that type of pattern. Right.
Period. All of us react with what's outside of us, interact with what's outside of us. It's our job to just stay as centered as we can. So we're not all on that. So learning to connect differently in your body, learning to stay open here.
In the heart.
Learning, your heart center. Okay. I call these guys the confidence muscles. So,
okay, these guys that she's pointing to are where your shoulder blades come together in your spine. So if you were to like push your elbows to try and touch in the back, you'll feel where everything mushes together at your spine,
now can
right?
you feel how you're forcing that?
Well, I was doing it to try and be able
I
to just
understand.
yeah, I don't need to force that.
Now feel the difference. Feel them, allow them to slide back and down and let this open up. That's the point. It's like, how can you allow and be in your body instead of like forcing your body to do whatever?
The language that we use, the way that we show up in a meeting. So if we say one of our company values is customer service, yet we turn around and we have limits on how long we're allowed to stay on the phone with somebody to maximize our time. That is a disconnect. Okay. And what I'm hearing you say, for example, is that there's also that same disconnect in our body. The way we say we want to be, the way we say we are, but what we're actually doing when they don't line up is pretty obvious. Something's going to be yelling at you inside your body.
And other people are going to pick it up. Everything shows up in our presence.
And that's going to be if we think we're being kind and courteous and somebody's like, at us, right? That's a reflection of how we are in our body, is it not?
So learning to rewire. So anchoring mindset through movement.
Mindset through movement.
Anchoring mindset through movement. So bringing it into your body. Okay. So, you know, they tell you to do the power postures and all that stuff before you go in the interview. There's a reason. It goes back, circling back around to the testosterone, right? It literally working with power postures, working with staying open, working with staying feet on the floor, literally will anchor the open, smart, personal power centered mindset, working with anchoring it with the movement and posture in your body. Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. And so somebody listening might go, we're talking about personal power now. We've got this centered place in our body. What are you talking about?
Mindset.
Tracy? Thank you. So when we talk about mindset, so for all of you listening, if you don't believe in mindset either, well, you're probably not listening to this show.
Mindset and languaging and
yes, exactly. So have you ever read the book Mindset by Dr. Wick? I think is she right here?
I'm going to say, do you have it?
I do, but I don't know if it's here. Oh, I do. Look.
Brian Tracy. I saw him speak in September.
Oh, cool. And these are only some of my books. I got them all over my office in piles. So Dr. Carol Dweck, she talks about open and closed mindsets and how we tend to be one or the other. An open mindset
I look like I have an open mindset?
Right. Probably not. No. Controlling people, probably not. Predetermined. So if you're a perfectionist, one of the things they talk about is if you're not going to do it until you can do it right, is a closed mindset. I've already reached my limit. Whereas there's an open mindset of there's always possibility. Who knows what can happen? A little more adaptive, you know, they respond differently. We can change them. We can change from a closed to an open mindset that she talks about in her book and in her stuff. For everybody listening, we're thinking about mindset. This is exactly, Tracy, what you are talking about in our body. Instead of using intellect only, we're adding the emotional intelligence piece to it. How long do you have to work with somebody before they start to see a mindset shift?
It just depends on the person and really like what they've got in there and you know, what they're operating from. You know, my people always have shifts immediately the first month. You know, it's just, here's level 1, level 2. We just start here and we go deeper and there's just levels. So it just really depends. This one woman I was just talking about, shifts at least with the first month, at least with that her paying attention to her body was important at all. Instead of ignoring it and I mean, you know, all the other stuff involved in that. I think it was 4 months in that we had that big breakthrough with languaging, and we've been working with languaging for 3 months, you know, but it's just, we all have different layers. We can change one thing and then there's something else. I mean, that's the joy of being human, if you will, you know, we're always evolving.
And we may never get rid of it completely. I mean, there's something too. So something that makes us sad, something that sends us into a suffering state. Every time we're working on this work, whatever that work is, for mindset work, emotional intelligence, intellect, each one of those, when we feel like we're crashing, and maybe we do crash, we have a new rock bottom. It's a little higher
Totally.
than before. It's a little higher than before.
Totally.
It's because we have more awareness,
Totally.
because we have more knowledge, because we have more presence in our body. So I'm not talking about the presence like when you walk in the room. I'm talking about the presence to recognize what's in a body.
Same.
Well,
Go ahead.
Come on, talk to us about that. Same.
So how present you are with yourself and in your body and who you are is your presence in the room, period. People pick up on it. You are embodying your confidence and in yourself, your presence within yourself, belief in yourself all the time. People pick up on it. That's the whole point. It's our presence in the room. Anyway, but yes.
So you can have a big presence in the room.
So hang on.
I'm just kind of thinking about this because you can have a big presence and still feel approachable, but nobody would walk up to you. I say you, I'm talking in general. But I have had that happen to me. So I cannot wear red and go into a room.
Isn't that interesting that that's what your company is called?
I know, right?
So
there's an element to that. There's a whole big passion piece.
It doesn't, okay, first of all.
Because it's amplified in different ways.
Presence?
Yeah.
Who you are?
Yeah.
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 So think about the people that have a clear, big presence, right? They're authentic.
Yes.
People that come in and just take over the room aren't necessarily authentic. Their presence might be like big and overbearing. Doesn't mean they have a powerful, centered, authentic presence. It just means they've got taking over the room. So there's a difference.
That's where I was trying to go with some of this, because I really feel like the more we know ourselves, the more we can understand the reactions. If we have a big presence, and I have a big presence. I will walk into a room
and pretty clear.
Everybody will know I have arrived, whether they are willing to admit it or not. Now, when it comes time to talk to people, I could also stand on a wall and be a wallflower. And even with that big presence, nobody will come up and talk to me unless I start first. And I have no problem with that because it's who I am. It's what I'm about. But I find that interesting because if I'm shy, and it takes me a lot of courage, yet I somehow have this big presence that I'm unaware of, how could somebody who is, and I keep saying at least people who listen to the show can tell when I'm talking about myself and other people.
Well, use I mean, it makes more powerful.
The story. Okay.
Language.
So I'm shy and I have this big presence. And so there's a disconnect here. So not only am I not going to go talk to somebody, I don't understand why nobody wants to talk to me, which, by the way, that's probably a story. And people tell me, and I just reinforce my personal story of being this wallflower and nobody will talk to me. So let's say we're going to,
your personal story of being a wallflower makes you kind of unclear.
Or it makes you very clear and your presence is saying, stay away, I'm a wallflower.
Very possible.
But
I guess that's true too.
I think they both could be possible.
Right.
And so if I don't think I'm projecting wallflower, I think I'm projecting approachability, but nobody's coming toward me. Right. So what you said. Okay. How could I miss wallflower? What would be the first thing you would say in my situation? What do I need to do to change? Because I don't have the courage necessarily yet. Could I be in my body and change my presence? Which might give me a different, of course, courage.
So wallflowers generally have something making them, some kind of belief, some kind of feeling, some kind of something from somewhere, making them feel like they need to be invisible.
Okay.
That's different than shy.
I think this is a good distinction. Language matters.
So,
yes.
Shy can still be fairly approachable and can go up and talk to people. Wallflower wants to not be seen. Does that make sense? So your question was, how can you change it? If you're a wallflower, you have to want to change it, first of all. If you're really shy, owning and embodying that you're really shy and being okay with it, taking a risk anyway, if you're a wallflower, but you still have this belief that you need to be invisible, no matter what, that's going to precede you.
Right.
And take over in any interaction. Does that answer your question?
It goes back to how we are in our bodies.
It's well, yeah, all of this is how you are in your body.
Yeah.
I mean, we are here in these bodies in this world. Everything about us shows up in the body in the world. How we write a business plan.
We're not going to go there today.
How we network. I mean, really.
Yeah, it's true.
You know? How we start a business conversation, how we start a romantic relationship, everything.
I'm thinking.
So
I'm thinking.
Bringing yourself back to your body, right here, right now. Touching things and noticing things and being in your body helps create that present, clear space.
You know what?
Otherwise, we're all out here all the time.
That's really interesting.
I said this in the very beginning, too.
I know.
So go ahead.
No, it's totally okay.
No, it's good.
We're circling back around. Well, no,
it's good because you've gotten something as we've been talking to go back to.
Well, when you're every single time you say you're touching, I totally agree. I'm always touching something. And
touch it and actually sense it. Yes.
Well, and that's something I do, right? I'll walk up to people and I'll put my hand on their shoulder. We hugged on the radio today.
Yeah.
I will walk out and I will touch the people in my life. So when I'm at home and I'm in my home life, I will sit down. I will want to sit next to somebody and actually touch them while I'm sitting. Yeah. And so that's just, you're right. It's an awareness. And I come by that naturally. That happens if you are familiar with the love languages, that's my love language.
So
one of them.
That I would say is a reflection of your clarity within yourself and your interaction with your world, your presence in the world. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Only, what is the perspective? What is the percentage? Most people are visual. Second, most people are auditory. And then third is kinesthetic, the way we learn. I can't remember the exact percentage.
Learning is different. You're talking brain. I mean,
but that's but I really feel like okay, so keep going because I want clarity there.
So knowing what we know, we are still intuitive animals too.
Sure.
So we sense the truth.
Yes.
It's different than brain learning.
Well, but how we choose to interact with our brain though would be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know what I know, knowing the truth, sensing it. Again, it's a body thing. And then what do we do with it? That's the learning piece.
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
So that's the action. That's the intellectual. That's the let me take it into making something happen from knowing what I know. Right?
You're so funny. And I'm standing here thinking, all I do is act and then I learn what I know.
Yeah, well, here's the gold. What if you could change it? What if you could do it like, okay, let me get really clear and then take smart action. So I was talking to you about a group that I want to join before we came on the air. And I just know that it's not time for me to join said group. For a few of my own knowing reasons.
Yes.
So I'm taking action in continuing to do these other things instead of joining this group yet. In that I'm taking knowing what I know for whatever reason. It doesn't make a difference if it makes sense or not. I know it.
Yeah. I love that.
So taking action into this is what I need to do now for whatever reason. So things have a crazy way of making sense later on if we simply listen and okay, I know what this is.
Yeah.
I just have to go with it. This is my learning. This is my whatever, and go with it. And then we will most often.
We might be talking about the same thing in two different ways.
Okay, cool.
In the sense that
I think we're talking about the same thing. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about the language around it. I'm like, yeah, no, I just do stuff and then I just know it. And realistically, there is a knowing. Sometimes it's like I choose not to listen.
Unconscious.
Definitely there's an unconscious piece, but in the conscious piece, sometimes I'm really good at talking myself out of it. And then I start down a path and it's like, oh yeah, no, what I originally said was the right thing.
Bingo. See, that is a perfect example of your brain talking you out of it.
Yeah.
So our brains, our mind's job is to keep us safe, not necessarily to follow and listen to our heart.
Which takes us out of the playing field that we were talking about when we elevate to a different game, when we're playing a totally different game than everybody else, when we become aware, when we bring in all of these elements of being in our body, using our guts, giving ourselves the grace. All of those things then come down to how we're showing up. And that was not supposed to be a question. How we're showing up and the way that we look at the world and being able to go, oh, I don't need to be logical about this. Or I know the person I'm talking to is going to be overly intellectual about this. So now that I've made the decision, I know what questions to ask to support what I know, which of course adds knowing to physical knowing, brain learning, in addition to our intuition.
Yeah.
Why is this bold? Why is it bold to want to play on a playing field that nobody else is in?
So business,
or less people are in.
Business, we need to have emotion not controlling our businesses necessarily. That's business, period. And this kill ourselves at all cost thing that has become most business is killing us. And it's also crumbling. So it's time for a new way to do it. So a really effective salesperson, leader, business person comes from this centered space instead of being all over, right? That's a different paradigm and a different way of doing it than we have. And look what's happening in the world right now. All of that old stuff is crumbling. Would you agree?
I would agree that there are lights being shined. I'm not going to make such a generalization. However, if you wanted to be super general, there are major changes afoot.
There you go.
That's right.
Okay, so you just agreed with me without agreeing with me. So,
yes,
being able to be a rock star leader, to be a rock star salesperson, business person, we have to learn how to honor ourselves and honor the other person, right? And still be effective and smart with business. Make sense?
Yes.
Guts and grace, boundaries.
Okay, you heard it here. This is the voice of Bold Business Radio, and we are talking about guts and grace. This is program 132. You can find all the program notes at voiceofboldbusiness.com/P132. That is voiceofboldbusiness.com/P like program 132. You can also search the website for guts and grace. You might just have to go back and listen to parts of this again. One of the things that I enjoy about the conversations that I have with people is how we can do this circular piece of going a little deeper and coming back to what we started with.
It's life.
Coming down, and it is life.
It's totally life.
And so when we keep that in mind and we take into account the expertise that Tracy has shared with us today about touching our world around us, really feeling our feet in the ground, understanding our posture, figuring out what we want to be doing, well, and not with our heads.
Listening to knowing what we know.
Listening to what maybe is kind of trying to break through what our brain is telling us. And that's what it's all about, this concept of boundary. How are we defining it right now? Is it empowering us right now? And what will we do to make a change? Because as leaders, we're defining what it means to lead organizations effectively today. And the changes that are coming, that we are seeing, it is like a play-by-play, a day-by-day type of scenario. So what are you going to do? I'm going to say you're going to subscribe to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. You're going to rate us on iTunes and on YouTube, and make sure and share this with somebody who you think would benefit from it right now, so the right people looking for this information can receive it. That is my request of you as a listener of this program, because we want people to get the information that they need right now. And just keep in mind, it's what you do and it's how you use your guts and grace.
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.